The truth has finally leaked on longtime Miami Heat sharpshooter Duncan Robinson leaving the Heat behind for a new contending team that could desperately use his services in a high-profile trade that the Heat made that a lot of fans were split on, and obviously this move predicating off of one of the more shocking stories in recent years, and we're going to break it all down. What's up, guys? Welcome back to Heat Digest. It's Chris here. We're going to jump right into things, as always. If you guys are part of that 84.7 that's not subscribed to the channel, make sure to subscribe. 84.7% that is. There's not 84.7 people. There's not 70% of a person that's not subscribed. But if you guys are part of that group, make sure to subscribe for daily Miami Heat updates. We're on that grind right now, putting out multiple videos, trying to keep you guys updated with everything Miami Heat, and we are not slowing down anytime soon. We're taking this channel to the stratosphere by the time the season's begun. But let's jump into it. There's a lot to go over on the Miami Heat. As we know, Duncan Robinson, one of the longest tenured Heat players who is with the Heat for both NBA Finals appearances, has now left the team. He's moved on to new pastures in Detroit, and it was a pretty surprising moment. Even though we knew it was very possible that Dunk could be heading out and leaving, it still felt like it was something that just wasn't actually ever going to come to fruition in a lot of ways. Because when you look at it, he was just here for so long. It's so weird to imagine Duncan Robinson in another jersey that's not a Sioux Falls Skyforce jersey. So to see him move on to Detroit was definitely surprising, but he got a big contract. One that definitely gave us some flashbacks, considering that 5-year, $90 million deal that he got all those 5 years ago with Miami. A deal that at the time made a lot of sense, but then did not age the greatest, as he was in and out of the roster, or rotation, I should say, a lot between those periods. But now Robinson's gone, and he's moved on, and there was a lot of wondering on what the Heat brass was going to do to replace him, and obviously part of that deal was getting Simone Fontecchio to the Heat, which I thought was a good trade. I thought it worked out way better for Miami than it did for Detroit, because Simone did not really perform in Detroit last season, but he's shown a lot of upside at the NBA level, and I personally am a bigger Simone Fontecchio fan than I am of Duncan Robinson, so I thought this was a great move for Miami. But now Duncan Robinson has spoken on leaving the Miami Heat behind. Just diving into what he said, the moments in my career where on paper are the best accomplishment, or the moments where you have everything figured out, have been followed by just these gut-punching setbacks, and that's what life is a lot of the times. Everyone can sort of relate to that. It's not necessarily the fact that you go from a high to the low, but it's how you respond to it and how you find some equilibrium to find the peace and drive to continue to push forwards. And on top of that, he said the public perspective shifted my own perspective of myself. The challenging part of that, being benched and such, realizing and coming to terms with the fact that a public perception should not be indicative of or define how I think of myself or the process in which I take to get to the person who I want to be. And speaking on leaving for Miami, he said, when I think of a city like Detroit, I think of resilience. I think of a city that's seen the highest highs and the lowest lows and is still finding a way to bounce back. I think that embodies the people that inhabit it, and that's very much in tune and in line with everything my career has been. So Duncan Robinson saw the Miami Heat as a team that had a lot of success and he had a lot of good memories with, but the Pistons were a team that embodied him. He felt a relation to the Detroit Pistons. Now, first of all, it should be noted that Duncan Robinson, has a connection to Detroit and Michigan already. Robinson, after all, did play 3 years at Michigan after transferring from Williams College, so he is someone who's been there before. So it was, in a lot of ways, somewhat of a homecoming for Robinson to go back to Michigan's professional basketball team, and it is understandable. Again, definitely disappointing at the end of the day to see Duncan Robinson actually leave the Heat. He felt like someone who he was just never going to leave after this is where he came up. But again, he signed that big contract and he moved on. And, well, there was a lot of split opinions on the whole situation, with Robinson averaging 11 points last season with 2 rebounds and 2.5 assists. He shot 39% from 3, 42.7% in the corners, and also shot 43.7% from the field in general. Now, 73% of Dunk's shots were threes. Unsurprisingly, that is how he works. He's a spot-up shooter in every sense of the word, and he's a damn good one. The Pistons got an excellent shooter to replace Malik Beasley, who obviously had the gambling situation go down, and it's definitely a downgrade for the Pistons. Beasley does do more on the floor than Robinson does, but Robinson does give him a great shooter. Now, Beasley averaged 16 points per game last season with 2.6 rebounds and 2 assists per game, getting a steal per game along with shooting 41.6% from 3 and 53% on those corner threes, also shooting 43% from the field in general. Sorry, my brain broke for a second right there. But he shot 71% of his shots from deep, so he was more of just someone who's mainly just pulling from behind the arc anyway. So it does definitely it softens the blow of what Malik Beasley was really going to leave with Detroit with, considering he was gone. Apparently my brain still isn't working. But at the same time, I think the biggest thing here is that the Heat did get Simone Fontecchio, who obviously didn't have a great year this season. He put up 6 points and 3 rebounds a night, got an assist, and shot 40% from the field and 33.5% from 3, and shooting 28% on corner threes. Now, he didn't get a ton of action this season because he just wasn't in the Pistons rotation and JB Bickerstaff's squad. But in the past, we have seen Fontecchio be a huge member of the Pistons and of the Utah Jazz, and he was loved and was regarded as an excellent trade when the Pistons did acquire him at the 2024 trade deadline. Now, you look at Robinson in the playoffs. He played in 70 playoff games with Miami and was good. 8.5 points per game in that span. Shot 39% from 3 as well. So there was a lot of good there, along with shooting 43.6% from the field in a general sense. Duncan Robinson was an important playoff player for the Heat, giving them that spot-up shooter. And the Heat are hoping Fontecchio can sort of replace that in a lot of ways. Fontecchio has had good years from behind the arc. Once he got to Detroit from the Utah Jazz, he actually shot over 40% from 3. So he's shown that. He also shot over 40% from 3 just in general that year. And in Utah, he shot well, was averaging 15 points a game, once he got to Detroit. So there was a lot of good moments there. And he's shown a lot of good moments at the NBA level thus far. He's only 3 years into his NBA career. So there's a lot to like about Simone Fontecchio and his future in the league. Yeah, he's not young. He's 29 years old. He's going to be 30, but when it comes down to it, he's still got that jump that he can make being on the Miami Heat. We know what happens with role players who get to the Heat. Their ceilings raised because of Erik Spoelstra being the coach. This isn't new news to any of us. And as long as that's the case, we should be excited about Fontecchio on the Miami Heat. I think he's going to have one of his best, if not his best year in the NBA next season. And it's going to prove that this was a good deal for Miami, avoiding paying Duncan Robinson while also getting a player in Fontecchio who's going to be a huge part of this team going forwards for the next couple of seasons. As someone who, again, not young per se, but does, or at all, because he's going to be 30 next year, but he will have an impact going forwards with the Heat just because there's that Heat jump that's just basically inevitable to happen. So I don't think this is a huge loss for the Heat. Obviously, it's hard to replace an elite shooter, but you can do it and you can find them fairly often. So I do think it makes sense why Robinson left, but at the same time, I really, really think that the whole story, the real story behind why Duncan Robinson actually left is pretty simple. At the end of the day, Malik Beasley was going to get a lot of money, but Malik Beasley gambled a lot of money on the NBA. So, because of that, what's going to happen? Malik Beasley's not going to play in the NBA anymore. Duncan Robinson sort of did what Malik Beasley can do. So the Pistons are going to throw Duncan Robinson into the Beasley role, while the Heat will have to try to find a way to use Simone Fontecchio, something that I have full confidence that Erik Spoelstra will do. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments down below. Like this video, subscribe, turn on post notifications. Have a great day. I'll catch you on the next one.